young woman sitting over there?
Do you mean the woman wearing a red dress?
Yes, the one who's eating wedding cake. I don't think I know her.
Oh, that's the bride's sister.
Ah, is she the sister that lives in Scotland?
No, she lives in London. It's her brother who lives in Scotland. He's the man wearing a kilt. Their parents, who are retired now, live in Spain.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Jones, who I was sitting next to at lunch, was telling me about the house in Spain.
No, Grandma, you weren't sitting next to Mrs. Jones. That was Mrs. Taylor, who used to live next door to us.
Oh, well, she has a house in Spain too, which is why I got confused.
Grandma, who's the lady putting lipstick on over there?
Oh, that's Mavis. She's the girl I went to school with all those years ago.
Oh, yes. I've seen the photos Mum and Dad have at home.
Oh, by the way, who's taking photos of the wedding?
The photographer. He's over there.
He used a flash, which I hate. I always have red eyes.
Don't worry, Grandma. All the photos taken with that camera will be good. He's a top professional. Grandma, who's the boy talking to your friend Mavis?
Oh, that's her nephew, whose parents live in South Africa. But he lives in London with Mavis. He goes to the school where Mavis and I were students many years ago. Oh, look, he's coming over. I can introduce you.
Hello again. In today's lesson, we will explore the world of relative clauses. We'll remind ourselves of how to use defining and non-defining relative clauses. Then, we will look at two more types of clause: reduced relative clauses and comment clauses. You use defining relative clauses to identify the person or thing you are talking about. You begin a defining relative clause with words like that, which, who, whose, and where. Here are some examples from the wedding conversation. Yes, the one who's eating wedding cake. Is she the sister that lives in Scotland? Oh, that's her nephew whose parents live in South Africa. He goes to the school where Mavis and I were students. You can leave out the relative pronouns that, which, or who when they are not the subject of the verb in the relative clause. She's the girl I went to school with all those years ago. I've seen the photos Mum and Dad have at home. However, when the relative pronoun is the subject of the verb in the relative clause, you cannot leave it out. It's her brother who lives in Scotland. You use non-defining relative clauses to give extra information about the person or thing you are talking about. Non-defining relative clauses start and end with a comma. Their parents, who are retired now, live in Spain. Mrs. Jones, who I was sitting next to at lunch, was telling me about the house in Spain. Sometimes you can just use a participle instead of a relative pronoun and a full verb. These are called reduced relative clauses. You use a present participle for active verbs. Who's the young woman sitting over there? You mean the woman wearing the red dress? And a past participle for passive verbs. All the photos taken with that camera will be good. Their parents, retired now, live in Spain. Finally, if you want to comment on the whole of the main clause, you can use a comment clause after a comma. You always begin a comment clause with which. She has a house in Spain too, which is why I got confused. He used a flash, which I hate. So, the basic purpose of all relative clauses is to give more information. It's important to think about how to begin a relative clause and whether or not you need to use commas. Well, that's all for today. Thank you and see you again soon.